All right, so I'm glad that we've managed to do this on Zoom because me and you have been going back and forth for a few days now about, Jesus, Joshua, the idea of the two Marys, his mother, his partner, and maybe we could start this with me just telling you my knowledge of Mary Magdalene.
Yep, yep, go for it.
I don't even know if that's her second name, Magdalene.
Magdalene, yep, yep, yep.
Mary Mag.
Basically, the thing to remember is it's not her surname, it's a place. So she's Mary of Magdalene because in those days people didn't have surnames. There weren't so many people. So basically you would be like Mary, oh, she's the Mary from the town of Magdalene.
Okay,
You know, like Leonardo da Vinci. His surname wasn't da Vinci, he was Leonardo of
Da Vinci.
the town of Da Vinci. So it's that's sort of that's how it works because it wasn't until basically sort of the Industrial Revolution time when people would have to move places to earn money
Yeah.
that people had to take on surnames because you'd be associated with the town and people would live in their towns and those towns would be contextually self-sufficient. They'd have their own industries and they would trade and stuff like that. So it's
Wow.
a very different situation. So Mary Magdalene is Mary of Magdalene.
So I would be Indigo of Mitcham.
I guess so. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
That's where I was from and the town I was in kind of Surrey. So okay, Mary of Magdalene. So like it shows you how much I didn't even know that that was the surname. So I know of her as kind of like some kind of partner of Jesus, and that she was like a harlot, potentially like some kind of prostitute. That's the only knowledge I have really of her, and I don't really have much knowledge of the scriptures or the Bible when it comes to this. So this is why it's going to be an important conversation because instead of me having to learn decades of what I consider fairy tales, yeah, we can go straight to the
Yeah.
truth, and actually, I can actually learn. And we can decode the truth of Mary and what Joshua or Ayushus was it Ayushus Christos?
Well, it's Ishwa. There's the thing is, like I said, the only thing we can say for certain that his name wasn't Jesus Christ. You know,
For certain.
that's the one thing we do know because that's not a particularly Hebrew name in an area of purely Hebrew people. If you see what I mean,
Yeah,
it's just we know it's definitely not that. So
yeah,
we can say that with a large degree of confidence. I mean, it's become a placeholder now. You know, like Merlin was also Merdwin, and well, the easy pop culture way to remember it is this: when you watch or read the Lord of the Rings books, everyone's got their own name for Gandalf because he's touched every single culture. So Mithrandir and all that stuff. So it's that kind of a thing now. So when we say his name wasn't Jesus, that's not in any way, shape, or form an insult or demeaning. It's just that's what he's become sort of known as. The same thing with Buddha. A lot of people know the Buddha, but they don't know Siddhartha Gautama.
yeah,
For example, excuse the pronunciation. I'm sure it's terrible, but you,
yeah,
you
yeah,
get the gist of what I'm saying. So,
yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah,
And they don't know that the Buddha doesn't also have to be Siddhartha, or as he became Shakyamuni. It doesn't. It doesn't. Like the
yeah,
Buddha can also be, as we practice, Nichiren Daishonin, who was from a different time period. It represents a life state that's achieved, and someone who's kind of like. So it doesn't have to be one historical person only. So
yeah. It's a title. It's a title. Yeah,
it's the title, yeah. So yeah, like one thing that really resonated when me and you were speaking a few days ago is the idea that the deep state, the powers that be, the patriarchy have rewritten Mary in a certain way to destabilize the power of women, to empower the patriarchy, and so maybe this is what we're going to kind of discuss, and with your help, decode a little bit.
yeah. So one of the key things to remember is this: is that so first off, this idea of Mary Magdalene being a prostitute is completely wrong. There is no basis for it whatsoever. Okay, so she was not a prostitute saved by Jesus. Um, and the Bible actually doesn't say that. That's the funny thing. The Bible never actually says that. She was almost certainly. I'm just going to call him Jesus for the purposes of this, so I'm not constantly saying this.
Yeah, yeah,
Almost certainly, yeah, Jesus' closest disciple, and she was almost, I mean, like, this is like a 99% certainty. Again, I wasn't there, but it's a 99% certainty. She was the first disciple to actually preach about the resurrection. So she must have been particularly close to him to be the first one to do that. But she gets overlooked. So I've got some references here. So the key thing to remember is this. The reason why people think that she was a prostitute is, surprise, surprise, a pope made a mistake. And the precise mistake that was made was this. There is yet another Mary in the Bible.
Yeah.
Mary of Bethany, who almost certainly was, she was a sinful woman, and in the parlance of the time, that means in this instance she was almost certainly was a prostitute.
Yeah.
And not a prostitute in the sense of being a like a priestess of love, that kind of thing. Not someone who was in high regard in society,
Like
but
a tavern harlot.
That, yes, a tavern harlot. Yes, well put. Yeah, yeah. So basically, in 591 AD, give or take, Pope Gregory the First. I was not able to get a direct, persuasive take on whether he did this deliberately or as an accident, but he combined Mary Magdalene with Mary of Bethany, and so he cast her as a repentant prostitute. Which was not true. Now, here's the other thing. This is also connected to the westernization of the Bible, because there probably weren't that many Marys in the area at the time, particularly. Okay, same way that Jesus was not a Middle Eastern name, particularly. So that's where that starts. Okay, so if you want another reference, Homily 33 was where he conflated Mary Magdalene and. Now, here's the thing. So to complicate things, Pope Gregory technically conflates three Marys together. Okay. The main one is Mary of Bethany, which is in John 11, passages 1 and 2. And there's an unnamed sinful woman who washes Jesus' feet in Luke 7:36 to 50. So, and that's a reasonably famous passage from the Bible, that bit, but she's not named. And so when he gives this homily 33, because they number their speeches, he conflates them all together. Okay. Mary Magdalene is first mentioned in Luke 8:2. In the first century, okay.
Yeah.
The Gospels depict Mary Magdalene as a devout disciple of Jesus. So when you go as close to the source as you can get, then she is not, but by the people she was hanging out with, none of them sort of see her as a prostitute at all. None of them mention her being a prostitute. It's not until 600, bit less than 600 years later, a pope makes a mistake of that. And not too long after that, there is a very famous portrait in the Middle Ages. Don't ask me to name it because I can't remember. But there's a portrait of a penitent prostitute. Okay? And this erroneously, incorrectly gets mistaken for being Mary Magdalene. Because the artist says, it's in reference to Jesus, etc. So, just like the pictures we get of Jesus today are almost certainly I want to say not Ludwig, but one of the Borgias from the 15th century, who basically they were the most corrupt. The dad was the most corrupt pope ever, I think, and his son, who was incredibly arrogant, incredibly vain, basically under threat of literal death and torture, said to all the artists in the Vatican area, "You're going to paint every picture of Jesus to look like me," which is why we think Jesus is a white guy now with brown hair.
I know, and this is common knowledge, isn't it? This kind of information that this person recreated Jesus in his image, and it's what's propagated, through slavery and all these times. This image of him.
Yeah, exactly, and it's not hidden. It's just people don't want to. Frankly, a lot of people, especially people of faith, a lot of the time, don't want to think and don't want to learn. Now, that's true of lots of people in humanity. I'm not just picking on Christians or anybody Abrahamic or anything there. But look at the Ku Klux Klan saying it's the holy white race, and they cling to this idea, except it's also written in the Bible that Jesus had skin of bronze and hair of wool. Doesn't sound like a white guy to me.
Yeah.
You know, it's literally the only physical description we really get of Jesus in the whole Bible, really, as well. So
It'd be the most important thing we all look at, and so they create this opposite character, you know.
yeah, basically, exactly. And again, like I said, and we see this in America today, you know, the MAGA people and all those people who claim to be Christians, the evangelical right Christians who are extremists and are fundamentalists and are willing to do whatever to get power so they can shape the laws. These are not Christian people at all, not really, because they're not following it. Because if they did, they would realise they're following the teachings of someone from the area who looks like all the people that America are at war with in the Middle East. He looks more like someone from Iran that they've just recently bombed than any white person living in America right now.
Yeah.
So there you go. Anyway, here's the thing. Another bit of open knowledge that is overlooked. In 1969, the Vatican officially affirmed that Mary Magdalene was in fact not a prostitute.
Wow, 1969.
1969. They sort of, if you like, restore her, if you like. Okay? And so they officially said, no, Mary of Bethany and the unnamed sinful woman are separate people. Okay? They are not to be remotely thought of except by being connected by or being in the Bible. Okay? 1,378 years it took them to do that.
Wow.
And that's a conservative estimate based on sort of 1 AD and all that stuff. So it's a fair bit more than that.
But it's interesting that it's like they almost have to slip the truth out, you know, under the radar, you know, so that it's out there regardless. But I didn't know that, and I'm sure many people don't know that, you know, because it's still just kind of this common knowledge. Because otherwise, the world view should have changed about Mary, surely.
Well, you would have thought, and it's not hidden. It's not hidden. It's just the people who are trying to think how to put this, but the people who push Christianity the most are also the people who don't want to know and don't want to advertise that. Because how many Western religions or how many religions followed in the West right now can you name where the main central figure, the main spiritual figurehead, if you like, is a woman?
Yeah, well,
round about the same. Yeah,
or many.
It's it's round about the same amount of books Champion of the Wonder Horse has read, i.e., 0.
Okay.
You know,
yeah,
there's not any. Can you imagine? Like, if it was revealed that Jesus was in fact a woman, if incontrovertible proof came out that
a
Jesus
black
was a woman,
you know,
especially, at the very least, it would have been a brown-skinned woman, at the very least, kind of thing, if you keep in the same area.
Come on,
it would be absolutely, I mean, it would be literally whitewashed, because Jesus has been whitewashed. Like I said, the Borgias. That's why people think Jesus is white.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, he was really pale for an Italian guy. You know, so it's but in point of fact, Mary Magdalene was a devout follower of Jesus who witnessed his crucifixion, and according to, and I'll get the reference up in a minute, was the only disciple who stayed with him right until the very end, till the moment of his death. And she was also one of the few to witness his resurrection.
Wow.
So
sounds like she deserved to see it after staying with him till the end.
Yeah, exactly. So, like I said, it's now, and also here's another thing. As recently as 2016, the Vatican, if you like, they gave her a promotion. They elevated something called the liturgical rank, which basically means which holidays and which bits of scripture are more important. Mm-hmm. So her feast, because she's had a feast all this time, her feast was raised in rank. Her liturgical rank was raised. So she was sort of redubbed the apostle to the apostles, kind of meaning she was the most important one. She was, like, if you like, second in command after Jesus.
She was the main disciple.
Yeah, because she understood him better than the others, basically.
Wow.
But again,
so
is any attention drawn to this?
The Last Supper, is she depicted in that image?
No.
Okay. Interesting.
No, we can get that up but to the best of my knowledge, she isn't, unless there's a dubbed version. You got to remember the Last Supper was actually painted a long, long time after all the stuff happened. So
Yeah.
so when we're sort of looking at this, we're seeing someone who has been, I mean, relegated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, the thing is, if you look at the New Testament Gospels about the Last Supper scene, which is Matthew 26, sort of 17 to 30 something, and Mark 14, I think it's 12 to 26, and Luke and John.
Yeah.
Okay. It says very specifically that Jesus only had his Passover meal with 12 male apostles. She's not in it at all.
Okay. Yeah.
She's in gospel accounts set around around the same time, but she witnesses the crucifixion, which is Matthew, Mark, and John. She's present at the tomb, which is in all four gospels, interestingly enough. And John and Mark both say she was the first witness to the resurrected Jesus. So, yeah. So when we look at, I mean, things like, the Da Vinci Code and stuff like that. What we've also got is, her getting sort of, grandfathered in, if you like, in the Last Supper. Now, there is an interesting thing because you mentioned the Last Supper, the painting. If we look at that painting to the right, you've got someone who most people think is John, okay, who is kind of been rewritten as his chief apostle, if you like. Although there's also a lot of evidence to suggest that those two were rivals, Christian cult-wise, and that they actually battled each other, if you like. But that's another podcast. But here's the thing. Leonardo da Vinci might have been trying to subtly segue Mary Magdalene in because he paints John. Now, obviously, we don't have photos, and there's not much in my description, but he paints John as being incredibly feminine and very delicate. And some people speculate maybe it is Mary Magdalene, but that's speculation. We can't sort of, So when we're looking at this, we are seeing someone who is absolutely, I mean, really relegated to almost the opposite of what she was.
Can we talk about the timeline of like her life? Who was she? How she met Jesus? Was it love? Was it teenagers? Like, just kind of like the basic blocks of the story of Jesus and Mary.
Okay, right. So when we're looking at her, so we've got to construct this from biblical record, Christian traditions, and later legends because they don't always agree. So there's no description of her childhood. Okay, she's called Mary Magdalene, which sorry, I should have said this earlier. Technically means Mary from Magdala, which if anyone's thinking of visiting, it's a fishing town on the western shore of the Sea of Galilee, so not far from Jesus. Okay. Luke 8:2 says Jesus healed her from 7 demons. The nature of the demons isn't specified. It doesn't mean the 7 deadly sins necessarily. It could be physical illness, mental illness. It could mean demonic possession. And so, here we get later on, this is where she gets merged because some people say, well, actually, it's Jesus purging the sins from the prostitute. So it might not even be her. Because it could be Mary of Bethany or Mary of Bethany and the unnamed sinful woman in Luke 7 might be the same person. We won't ever know unless you invent a time machine.
Yeah.
But interestingly, in Eastern Christianity, they kept them distinct. But following on, so later on in Jesus' life, roughly AD, we're looking at like towards the end of his life, 27 to 30. So before the crucifixion, but not by a huge amount. Mm-hmm. According to Luke 8, early at the start of Luke book 8 of Luke, Mary joins Jesus and the disciples. She travels with them, helps support his ministry financially along with other women, because there were 2 other women, Joanna and Susanna, who sort of hung out with them. Again, not biblical names, but
Joanna and Susanna.
Joanna and Susanna, yeah.
They're 2 people in the Bible.
They are, yes, but they've got they're very small parts. But it makes a point of saying that they help support financially. Now, some people say this is because they want to say, well, she wasn't up to the spiritual task, but she had some money, and that's why she was allowed to tag along. So you see, how they were doing
Or
it.
not potentially being a harlot and using her body to help pay for it.
Well, that's never said explicitly, because remember, Mary gets merged later on. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. But we do get told she's part of Jesus's inner circle of followers. And here's the thing. Now, this is interesting. It would have been incredibly rare, if not unheard of, for a Jewish teacher, because remember, that's what Jesus would have been viewed as, because not everyone believed he was the Son of God or anything like that. That was very much I mean, think of it this way, okay? And again, not ragging on anyone. Imagine if someone declared they're the Son of God today. For the most part, you'd think they were mad.
Yeah.
But you get some people kind of believing, and some people maybe might have a listen. Okay, so the sort of translation at the time, if you like, in people's heads was, well, this guy's Jewish. He seems to know his holy law. So he would have been looked at the very least, as a Jewish teacher.
Yeah.
Okay. Judaism at the time, and this is a matter of historical record, this is not my opinion, but Jewish teacher at the time, exclusively male, pretty much. I mean, I've not heard of anyone else, but anyone with female being a female Jewish teacher, but also unheard of to have women, female disciples traveling with him.
Yeah.
So again, either Jesus was very, this is going to sound weird to say this, but very sort of spiritually and socially advanced, and Mary Magdalene was an exceptional woman for him to follow.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next thing we've got is AD 30 Holy Week, as they called it. Matthew, Mark, and John all tell us she was present at the cross, and that she stayed when most of the male disciples have fled. Now, there's two schools of thoughts on this. There's the sexist, patriarchal view, which is the other men left because they wanted to get on with stuff. They knew they had to keep doing the work, and that Mary Magdalene was weak and she just stayed there crying because she's a weak woman.
Mm-hmm.
Or there are the others who say, no, she stayed there till the end to support Jesus because she's the one who really got him and she was the closest disciple. And the others were not as close, and so they fled, and she cared so much that she stayed.
Yeah.
So, we know from Mark that she watched Joseph of Arimathea lay Jesus in the tomb.
That was his uncle, wasn't it?
Yep, very good. Yep, his uncle. In fact, yep. And then on the morning of the resurrection, Mark and Luke both say she goes to the tomb with other unnamed women to anoint Jesus' body. And she finds the tomb empty and, critically, is told by angels that he's risen. So by dint of that act alone, the angels deemed her worthy to bear witness to their heavenly glory, however you want to put it, and tell her the story direct.
Wow.
Okay, so we've got that.
Like
John,
an equal counterpart to Jesus, like that same kind of level of respect, like the feminine, obviously, reflection.
Yeah, and remember, we're looking at a rebirth here, and if there's one thing women are generally called upon to do, it's to, and I don't mean this in a sexist way, I mean this in a general biological way, but birth and rebirth, a thing that they are, they're for the most part are equipped to do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not excluding anyone from that because lots of women can't have children. I'm not saying they're less than because of that. I'm just saying in the concept, and certainly at the time when the Bible was written and when these events are alleged to have happened, that was how it worked.
Yeah.
According to John, who is, like I said, sort of segued in as the closest apostle, when you exclude Mary Magdalene, she was the first person to see the risen Christ, and he sends her out to tell others. So she was the apostle to the apostles. She had the big message, because remember, this would have been seen as the incontrovertible, irrefutable, undeniable proof that in fact Jesus is the Son of God. All the things he was saying was true.
Yeah, and the first person who's got to see it was a woman.
Precisely, exactly. So in a weird way, the Bible almost leaks out these big truths about her, but like I said, Pope Gregory 600 years later kind of wrecks it for her, and also, there is also whether you believe in God or not, it's bad marketing to have so many Marys.
Yeah,
You know, it's not good branding. Um, Granted, none of them were probably called Mary, but you know, think about this: if it was men who rewrote the Bible, which it was, let's not kid ourselves. They obviously got very lazy and didn't care about the female parts because everyone's a Mary.
they were just like in their tombs writing the Bible, drunk on like sake. Just Mary, Bethany, Susanna.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Yeah, this is Mary as well. Yeah, she can be Mary. But we've already named the mum Mary. Oh, well, yeah, but no one will care. This is later on. This is 30 years later. No one will confuse it. This is Mary of what's near Galilee. Oh, Magdala. There you go. She's another fishing person. There you go. There's another connection.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah, and later on it was like, oh, yeah, what was the name of that prostitute? Was she any good? Oh, what, Mary? Yeah. Oh, let's put her in as well. This will give me kid discount rates.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not. I don't mean to. I mean, I can't blaspheme. I don't believe in any of this, but I don't mean that to cause offence. I genuinely don't. I'm just teasing.
Yeah.
So after this, after the resurrection, everything kind of grinds to a halt. Okay, the New Testament doesn't give any more details about her life after the resurrection. Chances are she stayed in Jerusalem with early Christian communities. Don't know that for a fact, but it seems likely. Remember, there wasn't a lot of travel opportunities. Sorry?
This is after Jesus died.
Yeah, this is after Jesus. So remember, 3 years later, and again, the New Testament does not go into any detail on this. 3 years later, roughly, Jesus disappears, and the angels appear to say that Jesus was carried bodily into heaven. So he,
like actual angels took his actual physical corpse and up in past the firmament.
Yep, exactly. So Jesus disappears. Now, a lot of people take this as actually what had happened is John took his opportunity to seize Christian power. There was a bit of a skirmish, and that Jesus was in fact killed. And that was the explanation he gave because he used Jesus. Remember, because John lived a bit fair bit longer.
You mean this is after he's alive again? So
yes.
Jesus is resurrected, and then so what does he do? He's alive for 9 days.
No. 3 years. Roughly 33 AD is when he's approximately. We're told there's a lot of conflicting sources on this, but the closest we can get is roughly AD 33. He gets carried bodily into heaven. Everyone goes, "Where's Jesus?" And then some angels appear and say, "We've carried him bodily into heaven. He doesn't need to die to go to heaven because he's holy."
It's all very, coincidental that he dies at 33, and then he dies again at AD 33.
Hang on, wait. So he died in AD 30, and then
but he was
resurrected.
When
he was resurrected 3 days later. Remember, he resurrected on the third day. He rose, and then roughly 3 years later, he's carried off to heaven.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, it was 30 AD when he died, but he was 33 years old.
Yes.
And then it was in 33 AD he died again.
Remember, so the second time, technically, he doesn't die according to the scriptures. He's carried bodily to heaven. You got to remember, though, that AD, Anno Domini, is the demarcation point of when Jesus was born, the clocks got reset to 0. So that's what AD is, Anno Domini, basically after Christ.
So, but the clocks were reset back to 0 long after his death, right? Because, surely when he was...
Yeah.
It was like when he was born, they changed all the clocks when he was born.
No, exactly. No, of course not. No, it's hundreds of years later. I mean, you ought to remember that when we talk about... So remember, Jesus, King of the Jews, the Jewish century they just had was the 58th century for them. They never changed their clocks, their calendars. And you got to remember that on top of that, we went to the Gregorian calendar, and we had the missing 11 days.
Yeah, because it's supposed to be months and stuff like that.
Yeah, because we left the Julian calendar behind, and the more accurate Gregorian calendar was adopted. So we had to jump 11 days, and it freaked everyone out. And so, yeah.
So
that's where we've got that.
So when it comes to Mary, what do you think the kind of esoteric, metaphorical aspects of her really are, and why they've tried to decode her from Pope Gregory to be this harlot that's just got of no value?
Well, again, I mean, we talked about this in the last episode, that the Christian, all the Abrahamic religions, but let's concentrate on the Christian one, created, or at least heavily modified by the patriarchy. All the Nicene councils, no women on those, at least not any that got any say, and, no female popes. Keeping women in their place means you can control them, and it means essentially, that all you have to think of it this way, okay? Really simple thing to look at. In the West, at least, you have a guy and he says, "Oh, I've slept around with loads of women." Other men are going to go, "Right, well done. You know, you're a real man." Same thing, woman, slut, unclean, whore, get out.
Of course, yeah.
You know, simple as that. The control of sex, the control of pleasure, is also the control of self-determination. Okay. Notice that these religions all say you cannot get to heaven. You cannot get your afterlife reward unless you follow my exact teachings.
Yeah.
And that's it. No wiggle room at all. Modern interpretations say, well, no, if you lead a good life, you get to heaven. But you look at the Bible, it does not say that at all. You look at the Quran, you look at the Torah, more or less any religion where there is a male dominant force is not to do with the quality of your character. It's to do with the quality of your character plus render unto Caesar, basically.
Submission.
You've got to do it this way. Yeah. And notice the mission has a spiritual aspect to it, but again, it's always just this way, just by believing this and following these rules.
Oh, I said submission.
Oh, submission. Well, yeah, no, true. So it's submission. It is all submission. Render unto Caesar, like I said. Jesus goes from a rebel saying, right, we've got to change the way the world is run to, yeah, but you've got to pay your taxes as well. You've got to render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. You know, clearly added in when the Roman Empire transitioned into the Holy Roman Empire. People forget Roman's still in it. You know, it's right there on the tin, and people forget. You know, Rome didn't fall so much as it changed its disguise. It still dominated, but it figured if we can do it through religion and this ephemeral thing, we don't need the weapons, we don't need the sword point, we don't need the empire that way.
Yeah.
We guilt people, we shame people into it.
Yeah.
We get whatever we want by saying this is your only option. And, you know, trust me, anything bad that happens to you in life, especially if we do it, that's fine because your reward's in heaven. That's why Christianity was so popular amongst the slaves.
Yeah.
Because it was, you don't have to buy your way into heaven. You don't have to be highborn or anything like that. All the suffering you get in life, that's your ticket to get into heaven. So don't worry about it. Remember, they have that line, it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter heaven.
Wow.
All the rich people in the world, especially some Americans right now, they ignore that line.
Yeah.
But that's actually a true bit of wisdom there. You know,
that's one thing I've always found difficult to understand. You know, even with you know, like some of my Muslim friends, and they're the most incredible, amazing people. But you know, as someone myself who's devoted my life fundamentally on the knowledge of two books, the Lotus Sutra and the Gosho, you know, I would find it hard to devote my life to it. I literally chant something which it says Nam, which means I devote my life to, you know, the title of this book. And so for other people, you know, in the Quran or even in the Bible, if there's even one sentence which I'm going to have to ignore, it becomes an impure doctrine to me straight away. And I couldn't give my life to it. You know, if it says, for instance, you have to be violent to people that don't believe the same faith as you, or like, and often when I cite that quote, and I ask my Muslim friends, they'll be like, you know, yeah, no, but you know, that's different times, you know, it's a different context. And I get it's a different time. And I get Muhammad it was very different to have like a young 9-year-old. It was a whole different concept we can't imagine. So it's hard to be angry at Muhammad now because it's from a different context and time. But I couldn't give my life to something which it just feels like there's like things I have to ignore. Like you just said, like the Americans that don't want to ignore that a rich man it's harder to get into to heaven, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, there is, well, one of the many conflicts you have with religion that ascribes to a book is, one, people forget whether it's the word of God or not, it's written by man and therefore has all those inherent flaws and errors and edits and all that stuff. That's even when you ignore the contradictions and the, you know, as we talked about, the political agendas. But even beyond that, you've got the fact that you have people arguing, no, we must follow this exactly, or the people who are contextually maybe a bit more reasonable who say, well, no, we've got to update it. We've got to like take into account things have moved on a bit.
Yeah.
And so you have lines in all three of the Abrahamic religions saying, this is it. the Quran, for example, says there are no religions after this. This is the last one. It's very specifically queued up to be very didactic and very pointedly saying, this is it. This is the last religion. Anything against this, no good. It's like, I cannot remember his name, but one of the many times the Library of Alexandria was burnt down was by a Muslim leader who said, well, if it agrees with the Quran, it's redundant, so we can burn it. And if it disagrees with the Quran, we've got to burn it because it's redundant. So, the thing about Buddhism is, the simple fact of the matter is, there's no tranche of Buddhism that stops you reading anything. There's no tranche of Buddhism that punishes you for reading anything. And there's no tranche of Buddhism that says, right, well, okay, so as an Nichiren Buddhist, Lotus Sutra is the main thing, yeah? That's the sort of main
Well, it's
source,
the essence of Shakyamuni's life teachings, isn't it? That's what it's not told as like the ultimate truth in a sense. It's like, this is like the penultimate teaching of Shakyamuni's lifetime.
Yeah, and the thing is, you've got to remember as well that it takes into account in this instance, and I know obviously we're biased because we are Buddhist, but it's almost like the wisdom gets updated, it adapts. Buddha himself said, create your own Buddhism. He said, adapt my teachings so it fits you, so you can be the best Buddhist you can be. The Lotus Sutra is like the latest text, whereas a lot of religions, there's conflict over updating it. I mean, like I said, we've never had a female pope. Some countries still won't have female priests or anything like that. Gay people are still not allowed to be Catholics. And they're not.
I was going to say, it's important to say that, like, when we talk about like adapting it, it's still within kind of the boundaries of the teachings, which are eternal, and just like the ether is eternal, and certain forces within the universe, they're eternal, they're unchanging. And when these enlightened beings have understood these principles, that's eternal. But life and like the drama on the stage of life is transforming all the time. Culturally, things are changing. So it's like the eternal teachings are there, but they have to be able to adapt. And so these kind of, very rigid religions, which don't change with the time, you can tell that they've been weaponized, because that would never have been the real intentions, Yeshua, Jesus, wouldn't have wanted, the same rules to apply now for something which is completely different and out of context, thousands of years ago.
Yeah, and there have been several attempts. There was even a sitcom about it once, believe it or not, about trying to live biblically. And it was found to be impossible. You can't do it now because everything has changed. I mean, you're technically not allowed to wear two different types of material at the same time. So, So anyway, coming back to Mary Magdalene, just with her timeline. So again, so in the early Christian traditions, so in the Eastern Orthodox tradition, she is said to have travelled to Ephesus with Mary, the mother of Jesus, and John the Apostle, where she eventually died. So again, that's some knowledge. But the Western tradition has a different story. They say she goes to Rome and testifies before Emperor Tiberius about Jesus' resurrection in probably an attempt to get him to convert. So, where she ends up afterwards is choose your own adventure, really. I mean, according to French legend, which is from like the 6th and 9th century, so way after she died, they claim she travelled to southern France and lived as a hermit in a cave in, again, pronunciation, Saint Baume or Barme. I don't know how you pronounce it, I'm afraid. And she died there. There's something called the Golden Legend from the 13th century. And again, this recombines her with Mary of Bethany and the sinful woman and puts her back to being a repentant prostitute. But there's no sort of biblical connection here. But that's just, a legend from a long time, even after the Pope Gregory. The Gnostic texts, okay, which are like adjacent texts to the Bible, if you like. The Gospel of Mary and the Gospel of Philip, which is from like the 2nd and 3rd century, they actually very clearly state her as one of Jesus's most spiritually advanced disciples. But she may have been in conflict with Peter, another one of the apostles, but that she was a key interpreter of his teachings. So, there's a lot of apocrypha about her, and there's a lot of stuff that, basically the official story of her stops the moment she bears witness to the resurrection.
Wow.
It's that simple. So, so like I said, we can't really say beyond.
Yeah.
Beyond that, we really, really can't. So it's quite frustrating if you want to find out any more about her. But there's not so much you can find out. I mean, presumably in the sort of the Vatican Black Library and all that stuff.
Yeah, there's
There's
so much knowledge. She's not out there in a cage. But still, yeah, like
Yeah, because you've got to remember that we really get more or less what 3 years of her life that we've got a semi-reasonable accounting for.
of
3 years. That's of no. Well, Jesus, we get so with Jesus we get massive um, um, gaps in his life.
yeah.
Um,
When they say he was maybe in Egypt or India, there's a lot of speculation, isn't there?
Yeah, because we've got because there is some evidence that he may have gone to like Nepal or India and learnt from the Buddha, who
Yeah.
remember predates Jesus or a Buddha. I don't know if it would have been
But they say Lord
Um,
Maitreya was the person apparently.
say again.
Lord Maitreya apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's very important to sort of like take into account. So, whereas Jesus has big gaps, he's born. Then we jump to like one story when he was a little kid, when he wanders off from his parents and goes to church, and his mum freaks out, and he says, "Oh no, don't worry, mum, I was in my dad's house and all that." Just sort of say that he knew who he was from early on. Imagine that! What a mind bender that must have been, because we never get told when Jesus gets told that he's the Son of God. Because obviously, when he's a baby, he doesn't know he's a baby.
Yeah.
But at what point did someone break the news to him? Anyway, so we never get Jesus's "I was in an asylum because I couldn't handle being the Son of God" years.
It's funny because I actually read a book once by a woman called Dolores Cannon. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she passed away. She was like a channeler, take it with a pinch of salt. But I wanted to read it, and she said that she was having this. She channeled this information about Jesus and the Essenes, and also like the time that he was young, and apparently he like when he found out his power, there's actually stories where he'd actually killed people by accident because he was coming into his power and not knowing it, and it's like a lot of how they had to hide that information as he stepped into his power. So this info, if anyone wanted to read that, that's quite informative. Dolores Cannon and Jesus and the Essenes.
Right. Okay. I'll look out for that. So, so you see, like I said, and then it jumps forwards to he's about 27. He's got we never get the recruiting the disciples bit particularly, but then we've got that. We've got 3 years of that. Then he dies. Then he comes back to life 3 days later. Then 3 years later, there's another jump forwards, and it's him being carried bodily to heaven, and he doesn't say anything. He's just gone.
And
Which
what's interesting, I never knew about the 3 years after. For my story of Jesus was he resurrected, but I guess I never asked. He resurrected and went into the sky. I didn't know he actually lived a whole life and experience for 3 years, and then just one night some archangels came and lifted his actual dense body into the sky. That's a story I've never even heard of.
Yeah, it's called the Ascension. And basically, yeah, so it's Acts and Luke. He's not physically carried, he's described as being taken up, and a cloud hid him from the disciples' sight, after which 2 men in white, meant to be angels, spoke to them and said he was taken up into heaven. That's all Luke says. So there's no him being carried up is somewhat like allegorical, I suppose. Because there's a lot of Renaissance paintings that have cherubims and whatnot carrying him up into heaven. The funny thing is this, at least I think it's funny. Angels historically in the Bible did not have wings. The whole flying thing was added on later because the Holy Roman Empire realized that Egyptian gods, who were still worshipped, people didn't stop worshipping all the other gods, the local gods. They nearly all had wings, and people thought they were very attractive and pretty. And so they decided, let's give angels wings. And so that's why angels have wings now, just as an aesthetic thing.
Okay,
it's not part of it at all. When you look at angels, this is just a footnote, but when we look at angels in the Bible, you don't ever want to meet one. In the Old Testament, okay, they turn up to say to the faithful, okay, look, you're going to go through some crap now. It's going to be really bad. Okay, that's it. Okay, so, and then the angel of death comes down, wipes out the firstborn and all that stuff. So every time they appear, and even if you include when we talked about Job being tested and Satan being the enemy working for God rather than when he gets turned into Lucifer, another angel, probably an archangel. So the whole Old Testament, you would never want to see an angel. The only thing that, yeah, they just are gonna. If you see an angel, it means you're gonna go through crap. If you're one of the faithful, basically, that's it. In the New Testament, they're basically absent. They show up to say Jesus is going to be born, and they show up to say Jesus is risen, and then we get told that some angels are there when he ascends to heaven. So,
And
generally speaking,
these angels are like humanly kind of figures, are they described?
well, here's the thing. Later on, they get described as that. Before this, they had like multiple sets of eyes, and they were like
scary.
They were hard to look at. Yeah, they were genuinely hard to look at. So it all depends on which type of angel you're looking at, because they've all got different choirs and all that stuff. And then you've got in the Apocrypha, you've got the Grigori, the Watchers, who came down to earth and were tempted by flesh and took human wives, and that's where the I'm going to forget their names now. Half angels, half humans. What are they called? The giants. Oh, I mentioned it last time as well. That's really embarrassing to forget that now. What were they called? The app. It'll come to me. Give me a second. The Book of Enoch. Come on, brain.
Yeah, not the Nephilim, no?
Nephilim. That's it. Thank you. Oh my God.
Okay.
Yeah, that was embarrassing. Yeah, the Nephilim. I'm so sorry. Sorry, listeners and viewers. Yeah, the Nephilim. Like I said, you've got those angels as well, but they kind of get knocked to one side, and they've got all kinds of different punishments. So like I said,
it seems to me that really, especially the angels of the Old Testament, they're all demons.
In the way they behave, do you mean? Or
I'm just saying, like, they always turn up regarding death, or they had all these multiple eyes like a spider. Like, it doesn't feel like a beautiful, benevolent thing. It almost sounds like they're describing some kind of angels from hell.
Well, let's not forget, they are basically God's stormtroopers. They come down to say, behave or else, or you're going to go through the crap now, and it's part of God's plan, so deal with it.
Stormtroopers.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not saying that makes them bad or anything like that, but the different choirs have different aspects and all that jazz as well. But
what do you mean different choirs?
Different choirs, they're divided into choirs. You've got different so you've got, okay, so first off, generally speaking, you can recognize, so the 9 choirs of angels, okay, you've got within them, they're different spheres. So the first sphere are the ones that are in the direct presence of God, that are like sitting by his side. So you've got the seraphim, who are the highest order, the cherubim, who are like the guardians of mysteries and God's throne. And then you've got a group called the thrones, who are like God's justice and authority.
Yeah.
Okay. So they carry out God's judgments, allegedly with perfect humility. So there's that. Second sphere are the governing the cosmic rulers, so known as the dominions. So they oversee the lower choirs, and they're like the bureaucrats, if you like.
Yeah.
They delegate the tasks. You've got the virtues, who channel divine grace into like creation. They're the ones who usually are the ones who do the miracles, if you like.
Yeah.
And they do things to perform. They give people signs and they strengthen people's faiths. You've got the powers, who are the guardians against evil. They're the ones who maintain cosmic order. So they're the ones who fight demons mostly, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
The third sphere are called the ministers. Now, if I remember correctly, they're the ones who are directly involved with humanity. So they're the ones who interact most with the human beings. So you've got the principalities that guide nations and like inspire people to follow God's plan. You've got the archangels. Now, some people have the archangels being the toppermost angels. Okay. You can spot an angel because its name ends in L for the most part. Mm-hmm. So Gabriel, Michael, because L is also the name for God.
Raphael.
You've got L. Raphael's one, because you've got El, Baal, and Mael. Okay, before the other two were forgotten about, and it was just El, who then went on to become Jehovah and all that jazz. Okay, mm-hmm. Or was recognized as just, you still. The funny thing is, you still have the Holy Trinity, but it's one God divided into 3 rather than 3 gods. Mm-hmm. So, but that's why Gabriel, Michael, Raphael, etc. Not all of them, but mostly.
Yeah.
Those are the messengers, because remember, angel is Latin for messenger. So they're all messengers of a sort. But these are the guys who give the divine announcements, like Jesus being born and stuff like that. Okay. And then you've got regular old angels, who are like the personal guardians. This is where you get the idea of a guardian angel from. And they protect and guide and assist individuals. So 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 you've got 3 spheres and 9 choirs.
Wow.
Okay, sphere 1 is contemplating God. Sphere 2 is governing creation, and sphere 3 is the ones that deal with humans.
Wow. That's kind of it's kind of complicated information. Spheres. Why is it called a sphere and why is it called a choir?
The choir is because of the singing part.
Oh, because
You
they all
know,
sing these angels.
well, I mean, I suppose allegedly, yes. And the sphere is because it's the perfect shape. Remember, you look up and you see the sun; it's round. And like I said, you know, I mean, you look back historically long enough. Yahweh was a storm god, a Jewish storm god who got promoted to creator of everything. But yeah, and also, but remember, I said El, Mael, and Baal or Baal. Baal was a sun god as well. So, and a sphere is a perfect shape. It has no seams. There's no way in, there's no way out. It's perfect, and so therefore it's mysterious.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay,
You
yeah.
know, there's no seam on it. So, those are how the angels basically get sort of divided up. But like I said, if you're in the Old Testament times, you don't want to see one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
In the New Testament, they're barely in it. So, yeah.
So we've got about 6, 7 minutes left. Maybe we could like kind of wrap it up back on Mary. Yeah. And one thing we haven't touched on, but was there like a sexual aspect to Mary and Jesus's relationship, or is there like lessons we can learn about man woman from the story of them both? What value can we take from the story of Jesus and Mary now, the truthful story, that we now know that she was his most powerful confidant, that she was the first person to basically know the most powerful piece of information that's ever been known, that Jesus resurrected, and that's how much the deep state and this, the system has tried to dampen the actual image of the feminine energy.
Well, when you look at it, so she was mislabeled as a prostitute, okay, by the Pope, by the head of the church, so it endured for 1300, 1400 years. So she goes from being top dog to an example of sexual sin. So her actual role is forgotten about. Her power, if you like, in this is forgotten about. Her spiritual aspect is forgotten about. And it's almost like, well, she hung around Jesus because he forgave her. And that just shows Jesus is the spiritual person. A lot of important biblical scholars, Karen L. King, Bart Ehrman, try to emphasize that the Gospels say, well, no, she was a devoted disciple. She was a key witness. Her leadership and her agency gets taken away, even though in the Bible, all 4 Gospels have her at the crucifixion and the first one to see Jesus rise. Okay. Wow. So, like I said, she still has a lot of spiritual credibility, but the people who speak for the religion to the masses can always downplay it. They take away her spiritual credibility. They just emphasize, well, she was a woman, she was fallen. And, like I said, patronage, in Luke 8:1-3, I think it was, it states clearly that she, along with other women, provided financial and logistical support. Now, as I said before, maybe that means she was resourceful and independent. It was unusual for a woman to have her own money in those days, certainly. But at the same time, it's like she's not giving any spiritual help.
Yeah.
The main message of Jesus, she's just giving money, and she's paying for hotels, putting them up, that kind of thing.
Like a PA.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, if I was Jesus, I wouldn't want to sleep in a barn ever again. I'd want to actually stay in the hotel. So
Hotel.
But here's the thing. Well, remember, or an inn, I should say. Not she stayed there at the crucifixion whilst male disciples fled. Most of them fled. She stayed. So was she resilient and steadfast, or as the patriarch would have you believe, no, she just broke down and couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
And also remember, we've also got to take into account that she had far more risk in her life hanging out with Jesus, who was at the very least, regardless of what spirituality you attach to in terms of him being Son of God, she publicly associated with an incredibly controversial teacher. She traveled independently and she was a witness. She bore witness in a society that discounted female testimony. So the fact that she exists in the Bible at all, in a way, underscores how important she is.
Yeah.
Because think about it, the other 12 guys, they're guys. It was just as patriarchal in those days as it is now. Possibly worse. I mean, I wasn't there. But the fact is, if she got caught, she was done in society.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay? Simple as that. The guys could probably go back and get another job or whatever. You know, they could go back, they could probably still be rabbis and whatnot. But what could she do? So she was a lot braver than all of those guys.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know? And she is the first one to proclaim the resurrection theologically. She said, this is a divine thing. This is a divine truth. And by doing that, she basically was saying to the world, women can carry these spiritual truths and spiritual authorities as much as men. And of course, 2,225 years later, the Catholic Church, the Church of Jesus allegedly, still doesn't have women priests. So,
wow.
Sorry, Mary, you know?
Yeah.
So there you go. But look for books like the Gospel of Mary, which is a 2nd century Gnostic text, because that shows her as a teacher. That shows her wisdom and her compassion and her insight. It doesn't mention her being a prostitute because she wasn't.
Before we go,
You know?
do you have a quote from that? Or could you maybe find a quote, just maybe like an actual quote of her teachings? It would be nice to leave with actually something she personally said.
Well, here's the thing. Okay. What we've got to look at is the Bible doesn't really, have much. There are 2 quotes. Okay. And both of them are from the Gospel of Mary. There's nothing in the Bible. She says nothing in the Bible.
And in the Gospel of Mary, there's only 2 quotes in the whole book.
There are 2 quotes that no. There's more, but there are 2 quotes that pertain to what you're asking me.
Okay.
Okay. There are more, but when we're looking at her in the canonical Gospels, she doesn't really give any speeches. Okay. She's got the 3. Right. So I'll give you the quick biblical ones because I know we're running out of time. So John 20, she says, they have taken my Lord away and I don't know where they've put him. So she says this to the angels at the tomb. So she's just expressing her grief. So no great insight there. Later on in the same book, John, she says Rabboni, which means teacher. That's all, because she recognizes Jesus after he wakes up. And then a couple of bits later in John, she says, I've seen the Lord. So that's it. So essentially, she names Jesus as a teacher publicly and shows her relationship with him. Because if they were a couple or there was something else going on, obviously maybe it had been edited, but she probably would have said husband, lover, boyfriend, something along those lines, rather than teacher.
It's like how we would be like sensei. It's a true devotion to your mentor in a sense.
Yes.
And it's, so you're saying in the whole in the John Bible, part of the John section of the Bible, there's only 3 phrases that Mary of Magdalene actually says in the entire Bible, or just the John section?
Right. So we've got. She says, well, okay, so no, it's all in. That's it. The only thing the only other thing we can add in really is there's one more line she's got in John where she says to the angels, she thinks it's the gardener, if I remember correctly, but it's actually Jesus because she doesn't recognize him yet. She says, sir, if you've carried him away, tell me where you've put him and I will get him. That's it. As for that, oh, sorry, by the way, I should have said Rabboni or Rabboni is Aramaic for teacher. And you can see in the Hebrew, it becomes rabbi, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But that's it. She's got basically 4 lines in the Bible. If you go to the Gospel of Mary, the Gnostic texts, for example, she's got, I'm doing this off the top of my head. So I'm doing it's roughly, do not weep and be distressed, nor let your hearts be troubled, for his grace will be with you and will protect all of you. So, bit more depth there, and
quite a lot more than what she was saying before. Yeah,
it's an actual insight. And she says the other thing, because these are the only 2 I can roughly remember, is every creature exists in and with each other. They will dissolve again into their roots, for the nature of matter is to, I think it's dissolve back into nature. So she's talking about the circle of life there. So again, and that's an actual spiritual insight she's giving us there.
Yeah. That's juicy. There's meat on the table with that one instead of her just saying, sensei, So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. So again, we can't say for certain. We know the Bible's been edited back and forth a lot, but we don't know for certain how much Mary's been taken out. I would venture, based on just our discussion today, probably quite a bit.
yeah,
Probably quite a bit
yeah.
by male leaders,
Or maybe even some of the sacred teaching she had would have just been given to other
given
male
to someone
leaders
else.
and then just read so they can read because the power's there. It's just they couldn't let her be the the face of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you go even further into it. The idea that they are essentially that the Western world is essentially, let's not kid ourselves, getting all of this good spiritual stuff from a black man or a brown skinned man. There's no way, no, they're not going to accept that. Do you
Yeah,
think the average MAGA voter can conceive of the fact that, yeah, okay, Jesus was born in Nazareth. Yep, okay, fine. Any white people in Nazareth? No, except Jesus. Jesus was a white American somehow born in Nazareth.
yeah,
That's how their brain does the dance.
yeah.
So you think how much easier it is for a patriarchal organization like the papacy, like Catholicism,
Yeah.
to relegate Mary to no, she wasn't the chief disciple, she wasn't the apostle to the apostle,
Yeah.
she wasn't like the first and closest witness to the defining central event of Christianity, which was the resurrection.
Yeah.
No, she's a prostitute. Let's merge her in with a prostitute. Think about this. It was a pope who did it. A pope who probably would have spent most of his life reading and rereading the Bible, fingers crossed. And he made that basic. You're telling me he made that as a mistake? No, that was a deliberate choice
Yeah.
to merge Mary Magdalene with Mary of Bethany / the unnamed sinful fallen woman. So
Have it.
we've got it right there, almost from the horse's mouth.
Thank you, brother. What an insightful conversation. I can't wait for more of them.
The Gospel of, right, I want to make one quick recommend by K.L. King, The Gospel of Mary of Magdala, Jesus and the First Woman. That's a really great book on this if you want to go even further.
Thank you, brother.